fading skies. Tattered flags waving dreams in our eyes. The crowds roar like a storm on the wind. We're the underdogs fighting again.
Hey, what's going on, guys? And welcome to another edition of Stateside Footy Monday Night Edition with a very special guest tonight. But before we get into it, man, make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons because the channel absolutely is growing, especially over the last couple of months. And I do want to send a very big thank you to those that have done that. And of course, for the algorithm purposes, make sure you hit the likes as well, too. I don't exactly know how that works, but apparently somebody sent me a memo where that is actually important. So I'll let you guys take care of that. But again, man, thanks for tuning in. And of course, tonight we have a very special guest, a very talented content creator, and actually one of my personal favorites. And I decided to reach out, and thankfully he said yes. And from Tactical Manager TV, Filippo Silva. Good evening, Filippo. How you doing?
Hey, Steven. And I mean, thank you for inviting me. Every time someone is trying to build up their content, grow, and wants to have a nice conversation about our beloved U.S. men's national team, I'm always down. So I know some people sometimes like, oh, I'm happy he replied, but I think I almost reply, and I'm always happy to be a guest.
Well, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, man, I'm just grateful. You know what I mean? I actually enjoy the U.S. soccer community. You know, I like reaching out and talking to other content creators, and you know, for me, this is just awesome. So I'm very grateful.
For me, it's fun for me.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into it real quick. Every time I have a new guest on, I always want to ask, you know, how you came into this beautiful sport of soccer. You know, was it because I know exactly how I came into it, and I can tell you exactly when I saw my first match. And it actually happened to be the U.S. Trinidad game in November of 1989. And from that point, you know, I remember Gold Cup 91, obviously the World Cup in 94, Copa America 95, Confed Cup 99. So, I mean, I go back, back to the late 80s. But I'm just kind of curious, what was it about the sport that turned you on from the beginning?
Well, I was born in Brazil, in São Paulo, and then when I was like 3 or 4, we moved to California. So for me, if you ask me, it's just, I don't know when it started. It's always been something. My dad's very into soccer. My grandfather was. It was just the whole family. So I've always been into it. And then from birth, I was a Palmeiras fan. I still am a Palmeiras fan. Club-wise, that's what I follow, Brazilian soccer. But then national team, it's always been in between both. But the main thing with both of these teams is that, lucky for me, we don't play each other very often. It's not like U.S. I would hate to be Mexican American. That's what I would hate to be.
I hear you.
That one you essentially do have to choose one. They're playing
unless
each other.
Unless you're Lyndon Donovan, you know, then you can go on a Wells Fargo commercial and pimp out the Mexican national.
He'll in his case, it might be the best one. He chooses whoever pays more. So it might be the best case. He's the most rational one of them all. But
Very true.
So I don't. It's interesting because I talk to many Americans, and the ones that are more my age usually they'll have
Sure.
like Lyndon Donovan scoring against Algeria. They're like, I fell in love with this game.
Sure.
Definitely not the 2006 World Cup. We were not good in that one. But '02 also had some memorable
Sure.
moments. The 2-0, even the Germany game that the U.S. lost. It felt like the U.S. should have won, right? So it
Mhm.
was a remarkable moment, and it's also Germany that went on to the final.
Correct.
But I don't have a specific moment. It was just more like cultural coming down from my family.
That's excellent.
I remember the first World Cup that I watched. It was 2002. That's the first one that I have memory of. I was still a kid, but I remember that World Cup.
That's well, that was a good World Cup to get your first taste of U.S. soccer. But I will
For
say that
both, for both,
yeah,
Steve, for Brazil and the U.S.
that's a very true point. Yeah, my favorite memory wasn't actually a World Cup memory, and I know some people will point to Tim Howard versus Belgium in 2014, but for me it was beating Spain in the '09 Confed Cup. It actually almost felt at that point when you consider the back in historical context and that 3-year gap where Spain was considered Spain and they were winning every single trophy in a major tournament like that, to beat that type of team with the magnitude of those type of players, man, it was actually something special. Now, granted, I think we absolutely got slaughtered in the final, and I think you know who we got slaughtered by.
I
But
wouldn't
that
say
being said,
slaughtered. I mean, the U.S. had a 2-0 lead at halftime.
correct,
I think
correct,
for that specific game, going back to it, it's weird because the U.S. just beat that Spain team that is among the best of all time, if not the best. Right? They're up there, top three of the best national teams we've ever seen from that era of '08 to 2012. But it almost felt like against Brazil, the U.S. didn't believe they could beat Brazil in the final because you have that 2-0 lead, you kill off the game, or you find a way to waste. You just hold on to that lead. It doesn't matter
correct.
what you do. What you do, you hold on to that lead. It felt like the U.S. for that specific game, which I very much remember too. I think it was it Lucio that scored the header at the end, a corner. I think the Lucio, the
I
center.
think you might be right. I think you
Yeah,
might be right.
it's just that when the U.S. had the 2-0 lead after coming from a semifinals where the U.S. eliminated Spain, you would think they would find a way, but it just felt like maybe it got to a point where the American players just like, no, that's it's kind of like when you're at a bar and you're talking to a girl that's like very pretty and then she actually replies to you and you're like, oh crap, I never got this far. What do I do from here? so so, so
No, I'm good. I'm good.
yeah, that's what
That's
it
funny.
felt like with the US in that one. Because the US should have won that final. I wouldn't say slaughtered. Brazil was scared at halftime for sure.
Sure, but it's Brazil though, right? So it's like, I'm sure they had a moment of reflection and said, lads, it's Tottenham, or lads, it's the U.S. So
That would happen to Tottenham in the Champions League final when they were playing
that's
Liverpool.
the yeah, that's the historical quote from Sir Alex Ferguson when there was a big cup tie. I think this was back in, I want to say, the mid to late '90s, where it was the same situation where Tottenham had come in like winning 4 straight, and the players were a little nervous. And Alex Ferguson, the pregame, says, "Lad, it's Tottenham, relax." And they went out there and absolutely beat the brakes off of them. But all right, so listen, I want to talk about a few things because it's interesting when I pay attention to USMNT social media, and the interesting thing about it is I don't necessarily know if people are getting it right. And that being said, I don't really give a shit about it. Like, everybody's entitled to have that opinion, and that's fine. You can do that. But I always go back to historical context because I've seen this. I've seen essentially every single World Cup cycle since 1990, and the same problems that are true today were true back then. Like, our player pool is shit, and it's like, don't get me wrong. Now today we actually have more good players that are playing in Europe, but for the most part, when you talk about depth across the board, the problems are still the same problems are still today as it was back in 2014, as it was in 10, 6, 2002, 98. And the interesting thing about it is there's a reason why, at least in my opinion, I think there's a reason why for a need for dual nationals, because at certain positions we're just not producing. And I know I heard you on a episode of your show. I think you might have been talking with Eric Winalda, where you actually asked the question: is it talent or is it coaching? And the interesting thing about it is I don't necessarily believe it's a talent issue because, again, and I'm sure you potentially could elaborate more on this, but I mean, being here in mid-Michigan and being around certain youth teams, when I look at 13, 14, 15-year-old kids, I actually see incredibly talented kids that actually have massive upsides. But what I'm not seeing is coaching catching up to the talent. And it seems like the coaching has stayed stagnant essentially since the mid-90s. And when you look at the consistency of certain positions across the board, it almost seems that certain positions have actually stayed the most consistent, while other positions have gotten worse, or it's to a point where you actually need to go out and try to recruit a dual national because you just don't have depth at that certain position.
Yeah, so there's a lot to talk about there. Let me try to go by parts. So first, dual nationals. Just to make it clear to anyone watching, when Steve is saying dual nationals, I'm assuming he's saying the ones developed abroad. Because, for example, Pepe was developed here, right? But he is
Correct.
a dual national, so he's talking about the ones abroad. So it'd be like Balogun, Musa,
Correct.
Dest, Anthony Robinson, Johnny Cardoso.
Robinson.
Yeah,
Correct.
like these guys that he's
those that
referring
hold those that hold multiple passports and can play for different countries.
Yeah. I think let's talk about youth development in general. The way you measure usually if the country is improving with youth development and everything is you see the players, or you try to quantify the players that have been developed by the main pathway. What do I mean by that? If you go back to the 90s or early 90s and 80s, like you were talking about, the main pathway would have been college soccer here in the US, I'm
Correct.
assuming. So
Correct.
you look at that and you see how it's going. Nowadays, there's a few guys that come from USL, but ultimately the main pathway is Major League Soccer. That's not debatable. Now, if we look at the US national team and we remove every single player that was not developed by MLS at all, you remove all of these guys, is the team right now better than 2002? And this would be, you would remove Christian Pulisic. He was not developed under the conventional way, MLS.
Correct.
Balogun. Weah wasn't really MLS, even though people would try to say that. What do you have, like a year maybe in the Red Bull Academy, something like that?
Yeah, that doesn't count. That doesn't count.
Yeah, so Weah would be out, Dest would be out, Robinson would be out, Johnny would be out, Musa would be out. We don't only lose starters, we lose a ton of depth. The little depth that we have, we lose, right? So development in this country hasn't improved, and I don't care what people say, because they're going to say, but we have Christian Pulisic right now. We just talked about how he's an anomaly, right? And then outside of that, it's a lot of dual nationals that were developed in other countries. When we talk about coaching, talent, and all that, the U.S. definitely doesn't have a lack of talent for athletes. We are arguably the best sporting country in the world. If not, we're up there with most, right? We see that in the Olympics. I think there's two issues. Coaching's a problem, for sure. I don't think that part is debatable. And then there's also culture, which is where I think MLS failed. They failed to influence culture, where you are a soccer fan. So you having kids or a nephew or anything, you'll influence them from when they're like, when you ask me, when did you fall in love with the game? I don't have an answer because culture came in, right? In the US, we don't have enough people that have culture with soccer, that simply it trickles down, right? From the parents. And from that sense, that would have to come from MLS. They would have to be able to influence their communities, something that most, I'm not going to say all, but most MLS teams have failed. And the results are pretty obvious. So those would be the two issues. We can address the issues with coaching. We can address the issues with culture. But no, I don't think there's a talent problem in this country. We definitely have talent.
I would say in this context, is MLS doing more harm to the talent or helping? Vice versa, because it goes hand in hand with coaching as well too, because you actually do see players that are willing to go overseas and challenge themselves, but you never see coaches going overseas and challenge themselves. They're not willing to take assistant positions overseas underneath better coaches and refining their skills. You know that old saying, right? Iron sharpens iron, right? That, to the tip of the blade, right? The interesting thing about this is it to the detriment of the talent that coaches are willing to stay in America to get paid absorbent amount of monies and not test themselves. Meanwhile, continuing to stick with these old rehearsed coaching styles, sucking up to U.S. soccer. Also, the inverse of that is the league themselves holding talent back and not necessarily allowing certain U.S. players to go over and challenge themselves.
So two things. I have a question for you. You're talking about coaches at the senior level or youth level?
All the way, well, not necessarily at the youth level, because you have to actually work your way up through the American game. But for instance, coaches that are already at the MLS level, assistant coaches that are at the MLS level, even USL coaches that actually show talent, but instead of going overseas, they'll probably take a step up into Major League Soccer instead of actually going over and challenging himself as a player would, right? Because you talk about soccer culture quite a bit. There's ways that you can actually get around the culture and still being able to develop top flight talent.
Yes. So about the coaches, the senior coaches, yeah, I mean, Jesse Marsch did that, right? And we don't really know what Jesse Marsch's level would be in MLS these days, but I'm pretty sure the experience he's had in the Bundesliga, in Salzburg playing the Champions League, Leeds, I'm pretty sure he would bring to MLS a lot nowadays if he came back, right? Then he ended up going to Canada. He's coaching the Canadian national team. So, of course, if more coaches challenge themselves in that sense and went there to learn and fail and succeed, whatever it is, because you even see, like in MLS, you'll get a foreign coach like Wilfred Nancy, and he's been quite remarkable in the league. Now, is he an incredible coach? We haven't seen him tested, right, at a higher level, but in MLS, he looks pretty damn good, right? He looks pretty good.
Correct.
So that could be something. But to youth development, I think the main problem with youth development, it'll be that I might talk a lot. Is it okay if I talk a lot right now?
Yeah, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Okay, because this one might be a bit long in terms of coaching. There is a big issue with soccer here at the youth level where, because there is the pay-to-play model, which again, every country has pay-to-play, but they also have an open pyramid. They have an open pyramid, so they have the free academies where the goal is to develop players for the senior team and not really to win trophies. But when you have a pay-to-play model, and the people are going to talk about, but MLS has free academies. MLS does, but MLS Next or MLS Next Pro, there are a bunch of teams that are pay-to-play. It's just the MLS
100%.
team. It's essentially subsidized by those. They probably pay a fee or something, but it's very expensive actually. The problem is it's all based on results usually. So what does that do? When you're trying to develop a player, you need coaches that have an eye for talent. And sometimes you can see the way the kid moves. And again, 13-year-olds, they grow differently. Sometimes you'll get a 13-year-old that is much bigger, much stronger. So the one that maybe is a little bit more talented on the ball, when they grow and it kind of levels up and just kind of like evens out, but you already cut him off, right? He's already all, because you need to win the games. So you'll get the big, powerful kid. That's a problem. So you already lose talent there. Second thing that I see as a big issue now, I'll use a real life example. Orlando. Let me talk about Orlando here. The only free academy in Orlando is Orlando City. And Orlando City, to be honest, they do kind of everything in their power to destroy the other teams around, whatever they can do. Right? Whatever they can do to compete. They'll compete with after-school programs. They'll compete with soccer schools. And they won't work with the teams around the city, right? For example, let's say I have a soccer club here in Orlando, and I have a kid that I'm looking at, and he's like 10 or 11. I'm like, this kid is pure talent. He needs to be playing at a very high level at this age. Why would I refer him to Orlando City's academy? Give me one reason why I would do that. I would lose a client because they're not going to pay me anymore. I would lose my best player possibly, so I'll lose games, so parents will think I'm crap. So what's the motivation? Why isn't Orlando City reaching out to all the schools here instead of competing with them and going, listen, every year we'll do tryouts for this age. If the kid you refer makes it to the team, we'll pay you X amount to motivate these teams to send their best, develop players, build a community. They don't do that. I'm giving you one example, of course. And the issue with Orlando City being the only free academy is their academy is located in Kissimmee. And Orlando, I don't know if anyone's been here before. It's kind of spread out. So depending on where you are, you could be over an hour away from the training facilities. And then I ask you, like, if you're a dad, you have a job, you have kids, you want to rest, how do you find the time to be able to drive your kid to a 1 hour away, 2 hour round trip after work, after everything? How do you do that? there's not enough options because,
Mhm.
again, it's just the way the structure is built. If you,
Correct.
I've even seen UPSL, for example, a bunch of little UPSL clubs growing out of nowhere. Now, if these teams could go up the ranks to the fourth, fifth, third, second, first division, they could move up. You get a bunch of small investors, and they will try to develop players with free academies. You know why? Because it's cheaper to do that than to sign a professional player for $1 million or for 500,000. It's cheaper to develop a player locally.
100%. 100%.
So
And you bring up a very interesting point, but I'll add a little something to this because I'm here in mid-Michigan, so Flint, Lansing, right in the center of the mitten here. And our closest team is Detroit City FC, and by the way, they're also academy is pay for play as well too. At the USL level is pay to play. Our local MLS teams are either going to be Columbus or it's going to be Chicago. And I can tell you, being around the youth game here, I never see scouts from Major League Soccer. Very rarely in this neck of the woods we'll see we'll even see scouts from Detroit City FC coming up here. Right, they're glued to the Metro Detroit area. But here's the rub with this one, and this is something that nobody talks about, and especially in this state, single parenthood is actually at a higher percentage than actual married couples that actually have two income households. And a lot of kids get lost. A lot of kids get lost and don't get picked up in the system because a lot of single parent homes come with single parent incomes, and unfortunately, they can't pay the freight to get their kid, even if it's a talented kid. And so, what's left? What's left for the talented kid? High school soccer, and maybe if that kid is lucky, maybe he gets picked up by a D1 program if he's lucky. But generally speaking, that talent is probably done by the end of high school.
Well, not just
and
that.
There's absolutely zero community outreach here.
Yeah, and the thing is, and just to reinforce your point, there's no community outreach by MLS, which would be the league to do so. And since it's a closed system, you can only count on MLS to do so. And then USL to a certain extent, but again, they don't have a top flight, so it's not the same, even though USL Championship should be able to do so. But what's incredible about all of this is you'll see there's a lot of people that for some reason they love to defend the billionaire owners. They're so worried about the MLS billionaire owners. They're very worried about, you never know. The guy might go from 2 billion to 1 billion. So you got to protect that guy, right? And here's the problem with all of this.
And also their inflated franchise valuations as well too.
It's not real.
The real estate bubble that
But the overall point with it is they're going to say, but MLS now has free academies. The MLS teams, somewhat true. The problem is that from my understanding, and I could be wrong, it's free-ish, and it's at the U13 level. What is the kid supposed to do from age 7, 6 till 12 or 11? Where is he going to play? Where is he going to be developed? What is he supposed to do? Kick the ball in the backyard and then hope he becomes Messi from doing that? Like what is he supposed to do? So there's no, it's not being done properly. It's just not.
If you ask me, this is the crux of the problem with our player pool, right? And I know that you've actually said this as well too, where the interesting thing about this is that it actually could be remedied with one swoop of the pen. But that being said, the interest of U.S. soccer is not to develop talent in this country. Like that's the I guess I can use this term. That's the shittiest truth about our federation is the fact that I don't think they actually give a shit about growing the game in this country.
I have a lot of question marks about this federation. I'll give you an example. Yeah. Even because let me defend MLS here then for a second. MLS is a private corporation, so they should do what is best for MLS. Mm-hmm. I don't have an issue with Don Garber looking out for MLS. That's his job, right? That's what he should do. But just like anything in America, when there's a business, there are government regulations that are put upon that business some regulations are stupid. I agree with that. But there are some regulations that are necessary, right? You want to go to a doctor. I want to go to a doctor with a degree or with his licenses and many hours of practice and all that. So there are regulations that make sense. And U.S. soccer is the governing body. So they would be technically the government of soccer in America. Correct. Their job is to make it more accessible to people, make it more inclusive and not exclusive. MLS has to do what's best for MLS, but it's up to US Soccer to regulate that and say, can't do this, can't do that. We have to do an open pyramid. Oh, I can't do this. All right, MLS, you cannot bail out on the US Open Cup. Something like that. But they allow MLS to run rampant and do whatever they want. MLS can literally try to sabotage USL, which is not a good thing for US Soccer. Soccer is a competition among clubs, not leagues. Not leagues.
Yeah.
In America,
based on supporting merit.
Exactly. If MLS could, they would destroy USL right now, right? They would destroy it if they wanted to. Not if they wanted to, if they could. They definitely want to. But US Soccer is the one that's supposed to regulate all of that and make it, I guess, fair and allow small investors to get into the game and have the ability to move up the ranks. It doesn't matter if you invested 100 million. Your investment is at risk. And if you invest 100 million and someone else invests 20, but he's smarter with his money and he collects the spoils of that and he wins the league and he gets promoted and you get relegated, learn how to spend your money properly. Like, it doesn't matter if you spent more. Now, again, MLS having shiny stadiums, all of that, it looks pretty on camera, it looks great. But back to your point, how is this actually helping the average soccer fan in America? How is this actually helping the average soccer player at ages 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12? How is it helping them? Because it's definitely helping the owner. They're inflating their asset prices. They're loving it. They're getting a lot of connections with the cities because once they buy real estate there, they get access to the mayor and the governor, and they get to do whatever they want. So my question is, what is U.S. Soccer doing for soccer, not for MLS? And of course, like, you don't want to kill MLS. We need it. But how do you make it even where you actually allow clubs to be built by communities and not a random franchise just grow out of nowhere in a city and you hope you build culture out of that? It doesn't work that way. So it's a very long conversation, and I don't see it being resolved. I've met a lot of the U.S. Soccer executives. I was in a game in Austin in 2023 where I was invited by them, and I even tell this to everyone. I was invited by them. A friend of mine, Brett Oppenheim, that's been at the channel before, a real estate guy in LA. He knew the guys in the federation. He's very well known, a Netflix guy, and he asked them to pay for the flights of a few like YouTubers, influencers. So I went. Pete from 11 Yanks went. A few others. And I got to meet a few of the guys of the federation. And I don't think one of the conversations I had with one of the guys, I don't think it went how he wanted it to go. It wasn't.
I would assume.
Yeah. Like, me and Pete were talking to him, and it definitely didn't go the way he wanted it to go. The other ones were fine, but just getting to meet the people of U.S. Soccer, I think if you have little hope for them now, once you meet them, whatever little bit of hope you have, you just throw it away. You're just like, it's not going to work with them. Like, because right now you probably are very low on your hope, but you're like, there's a little bit, like maybe. It's like, but once you meet them, you're
not
like,
really.
Not really. Okay, so you don't even have to meet them. I guess meeting them would just be a confirmation for you.
That's exactly right, because we know exactly what's going to happen post 2026. I'm sure you and I would, if I was to tell you that post 2026, when Mauricio Pochettino heads back to Europe, the next manager of this U.S. men's national team will be somebody like Brian Schmetzer, Cherundolo, or they're going to revert back to what they've always done, right? It almost feels like everything just runs in cycles with this federation. It's like if something didn't work, if something didn't work 10 years ago, well, 10 years have passed and maybe it'll work now. And so they're just recycling through ideas.
Yeah, and then they're going to go with Kevin, Mathis Albert, say the future is bright. Then one or two of the kids will play well and do well. And then they're going to say the future's bright. And then we'll win a gold cup here and suck there. And it's just like the future is always bright. It's just like, when we get to the future here, we got to get to the future at some point. Because I also talked about this on the channel. Visiting Japan last year was eye-opening in terms of soccer. Because I've been to Brazil, I've been to Mexico, but those are countries that have a rich soccer culture, right? That goes down a century, maybe. It's been a while, right? Brazil and Mexico, a long time. So I went to Japan, which the J League started in the 90s alongside the US. And Japan honestly sucked at soccer before that too. And I would say nowadays, I know we just beat Japan's reserves and people are hyping that,
Sure.
but Japan is a really good national team right now with some really
Mhm.
good players. And when I was there were a few things I noticed. One, there was street soccer. A lot of kids. I was in Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, different cities, kids playing soccer in the street. A lot. Soccer game packed. I went to a J League game. I went to Kashima Antlers versus Cerezo Osaka. In the level of play that I watched, it was similar to the level of MLS minus the DPs. It doesn't have the
Right.
Messi, the Ricky Puig, but the level itself, very similar. Remove the DPs from MLS, and I think it's pretty even.
Pretty
Okay?
even.
Pretty even. The difference is 70 to 80% of the starting 11 of every team is Japanese. In MLS, the best team, well, honestly, first of all, the best players in MLS are not American. That's the first thing.
Correct.
Um,
Correct.
so that's why I said when people say you hate MLS, you don't want MLS players in the national team. There's a lot of MLS players that won the national team. I'd love to have Messi, Ricky Puig, um, um, even Hani Mukhtar, or
Right.
just many other players that like Tati Castellanos when he was playing there. Many players, but the American players in MLS are not the best. They're not the best players, and that's another thing too that U.S. Soccer can impose regulations, force them maybe to increase the salary cap, and
Yeah,
maybe
but there's a rub with that, though. There's a rub with increasing the salary cap. I do agree with you, by the way. I think last year I was looking at the cap numbers, and outside the DPs, I think the cap number for each team was like what 5.25 million
roughly.
for their squad, somewhere in that area. And if the interesting thing though is when you look at the investment of how every Major League Soccer team invests specifically with the DPs, but also non DPs like TAM level players, they're all foreign players. Now just imagine if that salary cap gets bumped up to 10, and now all of a sudden the door is open to Europe for maybe some good young players on loan. It just means less roster spots for American players. But that's the
Oh
interesting
no,
thing.
but I was going to add one thing.
Go ahead.
Every league in the world has a limit to how many foreign players you can have
Yep,
per roster. MLS should
very
have
true.
that. And I know some people are like, so what do you want for them to hold our American players hostage? No, that's not what's really going to happen. What's going to happen
They
is
can force them to develop.
the American
Yeah,
player, they're going to be forced to develop because they're not going to be okay. Let's say they bring all the good ones in Europe right now. That's like 15 players.
correct.
We have 30 teams in MLS, and you need 25 plus players per roster. So bring them back, fine, but you're going to have to develop players, or you're going to have a shit league. So you do that, and you also bring some foreigners, but MLS doesn't do that, right? They mainly spend a lot of money. Like for example, MLS spending millions of dollars on Son, brilliant player, and
Sure.
definitely have an impact on and off the field. But what is he going to do to help grow soccer in this country? Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. He's
All
gonna
it does is all it does is open a fan base to Korean Americans that are living in Los
while
Angeles.
but while
Yeah,
they're while he's there, then they're done.
correct.
It's like Kaká here in Orlando. The Brazilians would go watch him. They don't give a crap anymore about Orlando. They can't name one player in this roster nowadays. So it's just like it's this constant need of MLS of getting a gimmick. They're like sign the star gimmick, right? I think they're probably going to try to do that with Christian Pulisic after the World
Yeah.
Cup because Messi will be gone eventually, probably 2027.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, they did the same thing back in 2013 when when
Yeah.
Deuce
Clint
Deuce came back to my
Dempsey,
Seattle Sounders.
Howard, Bradley,
Yep,
Josie, everyone. Yeah.
yep, yep, absolutely,
So,
absolutely. And by the way, and I don't think that necessarily had the impact that they were hoping it was. Certainly, as we got closer to 2017, it certainly did not have the
well,
same impact.
it definitely was one of the reasons why we failed to qualify to the World
Yeah,
Cup. And
I
it
agree.
was also, I mean, I was younger back then and I wasn't really on social media with US soccer, so I don't know what they were saying. But I do think the anti MLS sentiment grew in that cycle.
Yeah, well, yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the reasons why Jurgen got fired. 100%. That was one
No,
of
no.
the.
What I'm saying is, like among the fan base, the
Sure.
anti-MLS sentiment grew when we failed to
Yeah.
qualify because a lot of people were blaming MLS, rightfully so. A good portion of it was MLS's fault. And again, it's like,
Well, but you also had your national team players being pissed at certain players that came back to Major League Soccer and made it vocal. You know what I mean? Jurgen Klinsmann was not necessarily a proponent of Major League Soccer. not like
No.
Pochettino. Pochettino's doing the song and dance right now. You know what I mean? Like I would probably like if you caught Pochettino on a without a camera on him, without somebody from U.S. Soccer whispering in his ear, I guarantee you he probably tells his assistants that Major League Soccer shit.
Most likely. I wonder if when push comes to shove, he's going to bring the best possible roster that he can.
Without a doubt.
I think
Without
he'll
a
end
doubt.
up, because then it will matter to him, the result.
Well, so yeah, I mean, people forget that his name and his reputation is attached to this job. If we get grouped hosting a World Cup, his upper level club career is over. Like he's not going to risk it. He's not going to risk it to bring 12 Major League Soccer players, right? And that's where, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because this is the other thing that I found 100% entertaining, was the fact that people were losing their minds that Tristan Blackman was on the roster and Christian Roldan was on the roster. Max Arfson continues to get called in. Somebody in the chat here, I think his name was Mateo, was talking about the hype train surrounding Diego Luna. And I was like, dude, I think you guys are missing the point here, because you have to understand why Mauricio Pochettino was hired to begin with in the first place. And it wasn't to streamline the youth national team to the first team. That's not his job. And it wasn't even his job to recruit dual nationals, because the powers that be at U.S. Soccer had deemed this generation as good enough to at least get to a quarterfinal, and they wanted a coach that was going to come in to work specifically with this golden generation. The interesting thing, though, is if you look at a normal 4-year cycle, Filippo, like the things that Pochettino is doing with this last Camp Cupcake, the Gold Cup, and this last window, is he's looking for a diamond in the rough. Because correct me if I'm wrong, there's now a 26-man roster for the World Cup, correct? Like he's looking for a diamond in the rough because he understands that the player pool is shit. And he has, like, it's an issue of depth, but also looking for somebody that he can turn to, because there are going to be games in the Gold Cup where we're trying to hold on. We're trying to hold on to a 1-0 lead, and we're playing against a team that's far and away better than us, and we're trying to hang on for dear life. Also, the inverse, we're going to be in a situation where it's going to be 1-1, and we're trying to get a result, and we're still trying to hang on for dear life, right? So there's going to be certain roles that are going to be facilitated, and I think when he got this job and took one look at this and said, "Fuck, man, I got to find somebody that I can actually trust." And so, yeah, he's saying the right things about Major League Soccer, but at the end of it, once we get to the World Cup 2026, the top 20 players that you and I know are the top 20 players are going to be there, without a doubt. Yeah. He's not going to risk it.
I think so too. I think also he's calling them up at a moment where he can afford, right, the losses.
That's exactly right.
He knows that he can lose now, and the consequences are unexistent. He's not going to lose his job, and he's making the MLS guys in the federation happy. They're happy.
That's exactly right.
Also, he's also not going to be like Jurgen, that would publicly criticize MLS. He's taking a different approach. I think that what he's saying can cause some damage, right? Some delusion, because he will, like, for example, I do think that Paxton Aronson coming back to MLS, for example, had something to do with the Gold Cup and Pochettino's comments, because Paxton was a player that I talked about this on the channel. He's not like a super high ceiling player, but it seemed like he was going on the right trajectory in Europe. He went to the Bundesliga, didn't do well, was struggling for minutes, went to the Eredivisie, did well, was the young player of the year.
He had one of his career years last year with Utrecht.
Exactly. So the next step was like, now let's fight for a spot in the top 5 league. Stay there for at least 2 years. Try. He didn't even try. So to me,
he wanted to be on the World Cup roster, and he saw the winds blowing, and it was in Major League Soccer. I totally understood. I understood the reason behind it. I didn't necessarily agree with it, but I can understand being a football player and looking at it, seeing like, shit, Sebastian Berhalter gets keeps getting called in, and I'm night and day better than Sebastian. You know what I mean? So maybe going to Colorado might be
and he gets to make more money, less pressure, because in Europe there's more pressure. So I get it with Paxton. It's a no-brainer. And like you said, I don't agree with it. I think he could have made it in Europe, and he was doing well. He was making the right choices and actually succeeding. But Pochettino's roster selections and comments probably had some influence on Paxton. And then obviously money. He's getting paid very well in Colorado and back home, right? I mean, Europe is probably a great place. Latin America has great places. Japan is a great place, but there's no
Yeah,
place like home where you grew up, right?
correct.
Usually people tend to go back to their homeland.
And it's what
So
Major League Soccer wants to. Active U.S. men's national team players with inside the rings. It's what Major League Soccer is desperate to get.
yeah, it is for sure.
The interesting thing though is that can I ask you? I got to ask you this question, and I'm curious to know what your answer is. What do you know? What the greatest lie that was ever told to U.S. men's national team fans in the last 15 years, and it's changed the complete trajectory of how we play and how we set up.
What, like recent years?
Yeah, essentially since 2011, 2012 when Jurgen got hired.
I mean, once you say it, I might like, oh, that's what it
Yeah,
is. But no, what is it?
that we are a front foot forward attacking nation because we have never been that in the history of our program.
But we
Because
weren't
we
with
just don't.
Jurgen.
Well, it's weird because he kind of installed certain tactics where we would actually have smoother transitions coming from defense into the counterattack. But he was brought in here to change the way and the style of which we play football because we can actually attack like other nations, right? Completely glossing over the fact that we don't develop world-class strikers, we don't develop world-class wingers, we don't develop world-class tens. Like historically, we've done a very good job of producing very good tactically sound CDMs, the occasional box-to-box player, a couple good center backs every
We used to
6
have
to 8
good
years,
goalkeepers.
and we used to have excellent goalkeepers that were playing the top flight of England. And we forever we were a very organized, very tactically sound defensive team that utilized whatever forward talent we had in the counterattack. And we were actually at our best essentially from 2001 all the way through 2011.
10.
Yeah, 2010, 2011. And it was the greatest lie that was told because look at the influence of the coaching hires that we've had since Jurgen Klinsmann. Like the biggest issue that I had with Greg Berhalter was the fact that he wanted to play like Barcelona 2012 without the player pool or the talent to match that type of ambition. And then we have Mauricio Pochettino who wants to play like Spurs 2016-17, wants to play a 4-2-3-1 narrow, but of course we don't have a Harry Kane and we don't have a Sonny. We don't have a Lucas Moura or a Christian Eriksen type player.
Or Dele Alli when he was good.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We just don't have it. And I think what was interesting about it, I think he came to a point and said enough's enough, and then he decided to roll with the back three. And all of a sudden, for one night at least, we looked absolutely awesome.
Yeah, I made a video actually about a tactical breakdown of how I'd want to play the U.S. national team. I think it was last week, and I kind of talked about it, how the U.S. men's national team right now is in a weird stage where we have more players that are maybe more technical than we once have, like Pulisic and all that, but we're not at the phase, or we're not there yet where we can actually dominate the opponent, disorganize them with the ball. So what I said, I even said this in the video, maybe we should realize that and go back here, how we used to play with these players that have a bit more quality. And then you might actually be a threat. Because then you have, I mean, Pulisic, Balogun, Weah on a counterattack, that's pretty dangerous. You can definitely get that going. And if you can defend well and counterattack with these guys, that might be something. Now, when we try to play progressive soccer, build out of the back, find positional play, try to build out of the back and try to get, it doesn't work with us. We don't have the players to do that. And also it kind of feels like it kills off the underdog mentality that this team once had, which they would bleed and fight for this team because now they think they're better than they are. And that's what leads to embarrassing results, like getting torched by Switzerland. I know, no disrespect to Switzerland, but that is a good national team, but that's not a team that 4-0s or 4-1s good teams, right? They don't do that. But I mean, we got to play progressive soccer. But you're right. I think Pochettino has probably already realized that he doesn't have the players. He's not going to find the players to do it. He's not going to. There is no diamond in the rough. Like he's not going to find it. The players Berhalter was calling up towards the end are more or less the best players. Those are the best players he'll have. So Pochettino has to just accept that. And it's like, you know what? We're going to have to play ugly. We're going to have to defend. We're going to have to know how to counterattack. And if it's a 1-0 win and people don't like it, so be it. It's a results-based business. If you win every game 1-0 or even 0-0, win on penalty shootouts in a World Cup, no one gives a shit. No one cares.
That's exactly
Just win.
right. That's exactly
I don't
right.
care if we 0-0 in the round of 32, round of 16, and just keep advancing with Matt Freese defending penalty kicks. I don't care. Advance.
Yeah. I feel the exact same way. One of the things that I here's the, like, I don't get into this all patriotic, like, they had heart, they had fight, this type of things. The reality was, you had a lot of guys back in those days that held their teammates accountable. That was one of the things that, at least from that sense, because when they stepped on the pitch, there was this mentality that they don't care who they're playing. They felt like they were going to show up because everybody was on the same page, and they're actually going to be a pitch to play against, right? A lot of those teams back in the early 2000s, like a team like Portugal that actually got humiliated in the World Cup, right? Afterwards, I remember some of those players essentially saying, like, they were tough to play against. And that's the whole point, right? That was the identity of the U.S. men's national team. They're going to show up. They're going to make it tough. And if you beat us, fair enough, but you're going to have to earn it. I don't think that's possible with this national team because, me personally, I just think we're dealing with a bunch of entitled kids that essentially were handed prestigious clubs at such an early age where they don't need the national team as much as those guys from previous eras needed the national team. That's how they got the national team, was their springboard to Europe.
That's a fair point. It kind of sucks because the national team is when you get to represent your country. So it should just simply mean that to the players, right? That's when you're representing your family, your friends, right? Because when you're representing the U.S., you're representing us, essentially. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And in their
100%.
case, like their dad, mom, sister, wife, whatever, best friend. It sucks that they might look at it this way, but it does sure feel like that. I was talking to a former Premier League player. I'm not going to name just because the guy said some weird stuff about Pulisic. I'm not going to name him, but I know him, and I was talking to him, and he even said when he was talking about the Gold Cup, he's not American, by the way. Okay, this is not an American player. And he asked me, he's like, why is, because he knows Pulisic, and he's like, why is Pulisic not in the Gold Cup? Is he injured? I'm like, no. And he's like,
No.
The US didn't call up Pulisic? I was like, no. Pochettino called up Pulisic. He said he wanted the summer off, and this guy couldn't wrap his head around of, like, he got called into his national team and he didn't go. And then he asked, does he have a knock? Like, is he dealing with something? I was like, no, he's on vacation making spaghetti with his girlfriend or something. I don't know. Like, he just didn't feel like being there. And then he made that snarky post, just what the doctor ordered. It's just one of those where it's like, dude, read the room. The fans are not happy.
Right.
The coach is not happy. And then you post that. It's like, are you trying to become unlikable? What exactly is your goal with that post? Just, you can do that. Like, you want to go rest. And as long as he shows up in the World Cup, all is forgiven, right? But it's just like it becomes very hard to like the generation with all this. McKennie shows up overweight for the Copa America. And we called it out. No one hears it. And then now 1 year later, Doug McIntyre releases an article saying, yeah, everyone noticed. It's like, where was everyone? Because we were talking about, people got pissed because I called him fat. They got pissed.
What's the big deal? It's the truth, right? So where is our soccer journalists actually having
now apparently it's
having the ball? Like, it's cool a year later, but where were you at the time saying, hey, whoa, like, why aren't you reporting it in real time when it actually happens, right?
Yeah, because it was accountability. It's like, this guy is clearly not fit to play. So you bench him, but no one says anything. Tactical manager's a hater, right? That's what comes out. And then Berhalter, because he had lost control of that group, he had to start McKennie 10, 20 pounds, whatever he was, overweight. And obviously McKennie was shit throughout the Copa America. It was pretty obvious.
100%. Yeah. Also, Tyler Adams was playing with a destroyed back at the time too, during that
limited minutes. That as well. That is another issue.
It just goes, for me, it's like, what is the motivation of these players today? And I don't want to be the old man in the room by, like, going like back in my day, that type of thing. But really, what is the motivation of these players today? Like just how important is it? Just how important is your nation to you? And what is it? What is that weird line where for the fact that you can absolutely dominate in Serie A or you can dominate in the championship or the Bundesliga, like it's nothing. Yet when you show up playing a team like Panama or Canada or Guatemala, you struggle. You know what I mean? Like it certainly isn't the coach. It's not the tactics. What is it?
Yeah, it felt like Pochettino inherited a culture where they think the U.S. national team is summer camp, and I get it. Pochettino's from Argentina, so he's probably looking at that and not understanding, right? He's looking at that. He's like, "What is going on here?" You go to Argentina; these guys are dying for this country. They want to play so badly, and he's probably looking at it and it's like, "What is he?" I can understand why Pochettino would look at it and it's like, this is unbelievable. These guys come here to play golf, go to the beach, see their family. The game is just like something extra.
Yeah. It's vacation.
It's vacation. So for Pochettino, I understand that he's probably frustrated with that. He can't straight up say it, but he kind of said it a few times, right? He has implied that a few times. It's just unbelievable because I saw, following Brazil, I saw Neymar challenge PSG in 2016 to play in the Olympics for Brazil. I saw him challenge. Like PSG said, "Oh, you're not going to play." He's like, "I'm going," and he went, and he played, and he won it. Neymar. And then when the U.S. had the last Olympics, this is what I heard. I heard a lot of the players that were in camp, and the Olympics was the Copa America year. A lot of players were in camp, and I think even the Olympic coach was there at some point, and he talked to a few guys to see if they wanted to go to the Olympics as well. None of them wanted.
None of them wanted to go.
It's unbelievable. Even players like I heard that Gio Reyna was invited because he was also of age, right, to play in the Olympics. Was invited. I heard that, but even though he wasn't playing for Dortmund at all, didn't want to go. And it wasn't just him. I heard most of the underage players, at some point, they asked them at least if they wanted to go. And clearly no one did it because none of them did.
I heard that, I know before, because we're getting pretty close to the end here, but what's funny about that is I actually heard that Jordan Morris actually turned down the Olympics as because they were allowed to have three overage players, right? And I think Walker Zimmerman was one of them, and I can't remember.
Was it Mihailovic?
I think Georgi Mihailovic might have been one. I know Zimmerman was on that team. But they did, because if you remember, they, that U23 Olympic team had absolutely no forward attackers. I think they were using Duncan
McGuire, which is a terrible
Duncan McGuire. And so they asked if Jordan wanted to come in as an overage to be starting striker for that Olympic team, and he said no.
Do you know
he wanted to stay with the Sounders.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was also the guy that rejected the Bundesliga move too.
Yep. Very, very true. Before I let you go, man, I do got to ask this question. And again, man, I want to thank you for taking time out of your evening. Just out of curiosity, I'm curious about how you feel about this, right? So let's just say there are, in that we can agree who the top 15 players are for this national team. Okay.
More or less.
I think, more or less. If there is a situation where Weston McKennie's club issue right now with Juventus, because he's not really getting any minutes, I think he got a start in that 4-4 draw against Dortmund in the Champions League. But outside of that, his minutes have been sparse. Let's just say that it doesn't improve, and he's essentially just used in that role where maybe in Serie A he gets 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and he doesn't necessarily get his season kicked on, and he's just one of those players that is frozen out. Does he get left off the World Cup roster, or a player that's similar that we both agree is insanely talented, but because they're not necessarily playing, does Pochettino actually axe a few guys that probably could help him win?
As of now, it looks like he would do that, right? Based on the data we have, he has prioritized lately players that are playing. That's why I even think Gio Reyna might not make to the next roster in October, because he played one game for Gladbach. Last one was back on the bench, not playing. So he might leave Gio out. So if McKennie's not playing for Juventus, he does look slim now. There's that. He's got that going for him. There is a scenario where it could happen. Now, am I for that? I guess everything depends on what's going on at the time and who are you bringing ahead of him, right? If you're bringing Sebastian Berhalter, maybe it's probably better to bring Weston McKennie as a backup with Juventus. But if you're leaving him out and you're bringing Tanner Tessman, that is playing very well for Lyon, and you're like, you know what? I mean, the guy's outplaying you. He's in form, more useful. It just really depends. It's hard to answer your question now because, one, we don't know if it's going to continue to be this way. Two, is McKennie going to be fit? Like, is he going to be in good shape? Because right now he is. He looks slim, at least, the game that I watched in the Champions League. But the question is like, who are you bringing to replace him? Because it can't be someone where the drop-off is just massive. That's the only issue. Like Roldan, for example, that's not going to help.
You're picking on my guy, man.
Sorry.
Listen,
in MLS, I like that guy, but not.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, right? Like, here's the thing. I like U.S. soccer and I like Major League Soccer, but I'm not dumb enough to sit here and say that the level is where it's at to get you ready for a World Cup, because it's not the same. It's not the same, right? There's at least 3 other players that I would rather have than a guy like Christian Roldan on the World Cup team. But he's still my guy, though. Yeah,
I'm hoping he'll become a coach one day. Seems like a great guy. Seems like a very smart guy too, that understands the game. It's just not the guy that I would have for the national team right now.
I would agree. Well, Filippo, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your evening. Hopefully, I can have you come on in a little bit, and we'll continue this as we get closer to World Cup 2026. Just for everybody who's out there that wants to get a hold of you, you can find Tactical Manager TV on YouTube at Tactical Manager, on X at Manager Tactical, and on Instagram at Tactical Manager TV. So, Filippo, thanks for taking the time out, man. That was really awesome, and I hope you have a great week, man.
Yeah, well, I had a great time here. Of course, whenever I have time, I try to go as many channels as I can. Obviously, nowadays, it seems like life is just going by very fast. A lot of stuff to do. And yeah, but I'll gladly be back. Thank you very much for having me. Almost an hour here. It went by so fast, but it was fun. It's always good to have a very open conversation with opinions that are similar, different here, different perspectives, and at the end of the day, respectful. Something that's very hard with soccer here in the U.S. You see it on Twitter very often, with a crowd that will just call you names instead of try to actually elaborate the topic. We're not always right. We're also not always wrong. But for some people, it seems like we're always wrong.
Well, I just always say, man, use historical context when you're talking about the national team, because it's not the national team didn't begin 3 years ago or 5 years ago. I mean, there's a lot of these issues that are not just associated with Mauricio Pochettino. These were problems that were under Triple G, under Jurgen, under Bob Bradley, Bruce Arena, Bora Milutinovic way back in the day as well too. So I mean, I that's usually what I tell people. It's like, do yourself a favor and pick up a history book, and you'll see some patterns when it comes to this national team. Mm-hmm. But that's going to do it for us. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe buttons, and we will see you a little bit later this week. Once again, Filippo, have a great evening.
Thank you.
Rusted goalposts under fading skies.